winding down, guys. But I have to tell a couple of stories about my two Uncle Tonys. My first Uncle Tony was a veteran second-story man. His job was to unlock things that weren't meant for people like him to unlock. He was the kind of guy that if he had something shiny in his pocket and you liked it, he'd give it to you. But also, he worked for Jimmy. Jimmy used to run one of the best crap games in the western suburbs. Food, broads, and gambling. Tony worked the door. He's right out of Central Casting. If you needed to have what a mob guy was supposed to look like, my Uncle Tony looked just like it. Let me tell you a little story. In my gambling days, I got myself in a little bit of trouble and had to go to a juice guy on the street to get the money. But I managed to pay the juice guy every week, and I paid him on the come down. For you who don't know what the come down is, that means you pay the juice, punch a little bit, and at the end of the day, you knock out the whole thing. Well, I had already paid everything off on the come down, but the juice guy says to me, "You still owe." I says, "But no, I don't." He says, "Yeah, you do. Make sure you're here with the payment next week." So I go by Uncle Tony and I explain to him what happened. First of all, he gives me a crack for going on juice, which is fine. I can take a crack. But I don't want to have to pay any more than I'm supposed to. He goes, "When you got to go see this guy again?" I said, "I'm supposed to see him Wednesday." So Wednesday, Uncle Tony comes with me. We go to a joint in Melrose Park. We walk in, Tony and I together, and the guy's sitting at the bar. I walk up to the guy and I say, "Listen, I'd like you to meet my Uncle Tony." Uncle Tony takes it from there and he goes, "Listen, I understand you had this kid on the come down and he paid you everything he owes you. What are you doing telling him he still owes?" Juice guy looks Uncle Tony right in the eye and he says, "I had no idea he knew anybody. I'm sorry." Being mob adjacent means you only got to pay the juice you're due. I got another story for Uncle Tony. I'm newly married to my wife. In trouble again with money because I don't learn too good. Tony knocks on the door. Now, Luann don't know him yet. She never met him. I'm not home. She opens the door. He pushes his way into the house, looking for me. She's scared to death. "Where's Mike? Where's Mike? Where's Mike? Call him." She says, "I think he's by his father's." She calls my father. She's on the phone with my father. And my father says, "What the hell are you letting anybody stranger into the house for?" "But Dad, I couldn't help it. He just plowed his way in the house." With that, she hands the phone to Uncle Tony. Uncle Tony's talking to my dad. Beep-a-da-bop-a-da-boop-a-da-bop. Dad tells Uncle Tony where I am. I'm over there. I'm having a cocktail. Next thing I see Uncle Tony walking towards me. Now, he don't look too happy, which means that can't be good for me. Well, he gets up to me, he goes, "Come on, we got to go around the corner and talk." He tells me, "I hear via the grapevine that you owe this guy over here $1,500. You keep promising to pay him." I said, "But, Unc, I can't pay him. I ain't got the money." "Well, why are you telling him you're going to pay him?" Well, I didn't know what else to say. He says, "All right, listen, so you understand, it's taken care of. You don't owe nobody nothing." Now we're sitting. And he reaches into his black leather coat pocket. He takes a little 25 Beretta out that he used to carry in his pocket, and he holds it to my thigh. And he says, "Listen, the next time you borrow money from one of these guys, I promise you, I will shoot you in the thigh myself. I won't break a bone. I'll only go through the meat. It'll hurt like hell, and you'll remember for the rest of your life." You want to know something? I really didn't remember. But that's how Uncle Tony ended. He probably died 7, 8 months later from cancer. God rest his soul. I also had another Uncle Tony. He wasn't that kind of guy, but he was related to Jimmy and Skip. He was their nephew. I'm still friends to this day with his grandson, with his daughters, with his sons, and that's a relationship that lasted until he died. Last time I saw him was at the Villa Scalabrini, and he didn't even know what his name was. This pretty much brings us to an end. But in 1995, my father unexpectedly, Mike, passed away. In true Mike fashion, he did it with flair. He died on my poor wife's birthday. Poor thing didn't get a birthday for 10 years because I was always commiserating my father's death. First thing I think of when we walked into the funeral home, right on, he looks pretty good for a dead guy, all dappered up with the rings. He looked terrific. And I looked around the room, and my father was the guy, he didn't like anybody. Everybody was this and he was that, and he had something to say about everybody. But everybody who walked in paid respects to my dad. And as we're standing at the end of the night praying, In walks Jimmy. Jimmy's now in a suit. He's in his late 70s. He's leaning on his son Jimmy to his left, and he's got a cane. Walks up to my dad's coffin, and he looks at my dad, and he pats him on the cheek, and he says, "You're a good boy, Mikey." And he walks by my ma, and he gives her a big kiss on the forehead. And he says, "You got to understand, your husband was the best." And there was one of them fat envelopes like we talked about earlier. It was $5,000. It didn't mean anything to Jimmy, but it was just a show of respect for my father. And I do believe that this is where the Gentile family's mob adjacent ends. Or did it?